You're ready to continue? Yes. You're ready.
We were talking, excuse me, we were talking about perceptions and what is real and what is not real.
Everything is perception, and everything's real.
Okay. As far as our solar system is concerned, are you acknowledging or aware of the possibility of a new planet being born?
There are more in the making than you are aware of. Many.
Is the Earth's...
In fact, often there are planets that you believe are in the process of diminishing that are actually in the process of becoming. In other words, scientists are thinking, oh, there was at one time water, and we say it is in the process of becoming. Yes.
I'm referring to information that I received that the Earth will no longer be the third rock from the sun, that we will move to the fourth orbit. And that is, I'm wondering if that is coinciding what you have previously talked about as Earth's realignment.
Well, your planet is always in the state of realigning because it is always in the state of rediscovering its balance, and because it is continuing to evolve. In other words, it is a living being, and it is continuing to expand, and that is why it is continuing to reclaim its balance. That's what your earthquakes and your volcanoes are all about. But bring us back around to your earlier question just now. In other words, what is it that you're reaching for? Let us give you a little basis here, and then perhaps what we will give you will not be as satisfying as what you are looking for, because we're really not big proponents of getting too far away from what you've come here to experience. Sometimes our physical friends will say how eager they are to have an out-of-body experience, and we say, well, we think that is wonderful because we want you to see through your broader eyes. But if you knew how much you wanted to be in these bodies, you wouldn't be trying to get out of them all of the time. In other words, there's something powerful about being focused here and having the creative experience that you've come here to live. Of course, the universe is expanding, but your Earth is not going anywhere. In other words, there is more experience and more expansion available here than you have the ability even to contemplate.
I'm just trying to get a visual perspective through your words about the immensity of our universe and things that we just haven't heard.
Well, words like endless and boundaryless are too vague for you, right. But we cannot find other words that are less vague or more satisfying. In other words, it is boundaryless because it is not about a place, it is about vibration. As we go round and round about subjects like this, it is usually, on the whole, not satisfying, because our physical friends, in order to understand, need us to speak in terms of what they do understand. And when we attempt that, there is distortion. In other words, as we try to explain the universe in quantifiable terms of what you recognize from your physical environment, then there is always, while sometimes more satisfaction in the understanding, a distortion. It's like someone like Esther, who is, as Esther is receiving us here, she's not receiving words. She's not hearing words that we are whispering to her that she is then repeating. We're offering information to her vibrationally. It's sort of like downloading vibration. And then at an unconscious level, she is translating it into the physical word equivalent. And so the two dimensions are, in a sense, bridged because she is hearing or feeling or reading the vibration and then finding words that match it. And the tricky thing about projecting things into the future when someone is reading like this is that it's hard for someone who's receiving the block of thought to decipher whether it is a future event or a past event. And you get a sense of what we were talking about. And so there are so many stories and so many fairy tales in man's attempt to understand God or understand non-physical and then express it through the framework of what he sees in this time-space reality. And so we're not big encouragers of trying to find unfindable words. We will do our best to answer anything specifically that you are asking.
Okay.
But it's a big job that you are asking. Is the universe large, bigger than words can explain? Is it continuing to expand endlessly? Are there other dimensions similar to what you have going on here, where there are leading edge experiencers that are having physical experiences? Many. Are those other beings having other experiences interacting with you, not in terms of their physical nature, but in the universe of thought, in the same way that we are communicating to you from something other than what you would call your time-space reality? It is certainly possible. Yes. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not as much fun for you if we ask our own questions. But
no, you're asking my questions. So I was going to ask you about the other beings and what relationship they have to us as Earthlings.
Not much, other than that they are, like you, extensions of source energy. In other words, sometimes physical humans feel discomfort with that idea, but when you get the idea, when you begin to grasp the idea of the eternal nature of that which is God or that which is non-physical, you have to understand that there is so much more expansion than you would be able to contemplate through your one-time space reality.
So when, let's say, we visit just nearby planets like Mars and we determine that there's not life there, or is it because we just don't see it, but it's actually there?
Well, it is.
I mean, is there as much going on? Is there as much going on Mars as there is here on Earth?
No, it is different. But Mars is one of those planets that we talked about that is still in the process of becoming. In other words, just like the dinosaur who roamed your planet before man arrived, the dinosaur at that time was the leading edge experiencer in this time-space reality. And what it was experiencing and asking for in terms of what would make it feel more comfortable, even the way the air evolved to support it, was all part of what was in the process of becoming for the arrival of that which is man. And so there are endless material manifestations that are extensions of focused thought that are in the process of becoming, and many that are as substantial as the one that you find here.
What about beings that live on spacecrafts and travel to other dimensions and have found a way to stay in their bodies, or a physical body, indefinitely? Is there such a being? Well, for instance, we leave our bodies and we come back, and we leave our bodies and come back. Are there physical beings that just, their bodies don't deteriorate at all?
It's a question that comes up often from physical friends, and we have to say to you, it always comes from your somewhat disconnected perspective of limitedness. What we mean by that is when you remember who you really are, and you remember the eternal nature of who you are, and you recognize the advantage of coming into an environment where your desires are fresh and new, and you begin to feel and truly grasp and know the eternal nature of your being, then you're not usually asking about how you could stay in this body forever, ever, and ever, and ever, and ever. In other words, you understand that you are an eternal being, and you're happy for the fresh perspective that gives you the opportunity to give birth to the fresh new desires. When people want to talk about staying in their bodies indefinitely, it is almost always from this place of fear of the unknown, sometimes from a place of spirit of adventure. But we promise you did not intend to come forth and hold the same perspective eternally. In other words, you like the freshness and the newness of the exposure to the environment. There is a human tendency that goes something like, well, there is something that we need to get done. And we will say, well, there is this basis of the universe, a triad of intentions, if you will, of freedom and growth and joy. And our friends will say, oh, yes, Abraham, growth, growth, growth. And we say, yes, the expansion is inevitable and natural, but it is about joy. The reason that life exists, the whole purpose of the expansion and even these expanding planets that you are talking about is about having the opportunity to experience and conclude and define. You know how much fun it is to move into a new space and make your new plans and make it your own and watch it expand around you. It really is what you have all intended as you come forth into this experience. You want the joyous experience of the expanding journey. So But often physical friends sort of get that all turned around. Like, I'm here to get a certain amount of work done before I die in order to receive some reward or satisfaction for it later. And we say all of the satisfaction is in the now, when you are in this powerful now, which is where all of your power is, and you are focused upon something in a way that allows the energy that creates worlds to flow through you. That's you, and that which you call God force, that's you having this experience. And that's what the expanding universe is all about, you see. So when you get in sync with that, when you begin to feel that connection on an often basis, then those questions about how long will I be in this body, or can I be in this body forever and ever, become less and less relevant, because you begin to don the feeling perspective of who you really are. And then you grasp the idea of being an eternal being, and you understand that you will have endless experiences, that the joyous being that is you will never cease to be, you see. When you make your transition from this experience, all that happens is the energy that is focused through you withdraws its attention. The death experience, you do not lose your sense of awareness of who you are at all. In fact, it is an expanded sense. Esther understands it to some degree as people will say, well, Esther, where do you go when Abraham speaks through you? And Esther will say, well, I have access to the words as they're being spoken. I can't really concentrate on them. I don't have a sense of where they're coming from, but it's an added to experience for me, she will say. It's like having confidence that is beyond usual and having knowing that is beyond usual. But it's not taking away from that which I am. It's adding to that which I am. And that's what it feels like to you from your expanded non-physical perspective. You'll know all that you are, you see. And so we know of now we'll answer your question. Now we've laid a basis for it. Mm-hmm. We know of no physical environment where beings remain in their physical beingness on an ongoing eternal basis, because it's not the nature of the way physical and non-physical interact.
Okay.
There is something so valuable about the new perspective. Think about it. Even now, we've been talking today about deliberately from your stage in life where you are now, releasing resistance so that you can allow who you really are to experience in this moment. And you say, yes, and for what reason? And we say, for the joy of it. And our physical friends say, yes, but really, toward what end? And we say, toward the joy of the experience of it. And they say, yes, but really, but toward what end? And what's it really all about? What are we supposed to get done? What are we supposed to accomplish? Who are we supposed to teach? Who are we supposed to save? And we say, it is all toward the end of the joyous expansion, in the same way that all of your creative endeavors are here in this physical environment. And so then our physical friends will say, but Abraham, what if everyone becomes innately selfish, as you seem to be teaching? And we say, indeed we do. We teach selfishness, because if you are not selfish enough to care about how you feel, then you are not in a focused enough place to ever be sure that you are in alignment with who you really are. And if you're not in alignment with who you really are, then you don't have anything to give anyone. And so, getting back to this business of expansion. So here you are as physical beings, and there are so many physical friends who over time have a good way of saying it is they've sort of picked up the sediment of resistance. They focus upon this thing that's happened and this thing that's happened and this thing that's happened, until little by little they practice thoughts that disallow the well-being that would be there for them otherwise. And then they say, I need to do the things, jump through the hoops, sacrifice in the way that I've been taught by others, so that I can receive my reward at some other point. And we say, your reward is present and available at all times. Your connection never ceases to be. You can pinch it off pretty good, but you can never disconnect from that which is really you see. Mm-hmm. And so in time, it really becomes irrelevant about where you are or how long you'll be there. You become like the beast. You come in, you whomp, you have a good time. You reemerge into non-physical. It is no big deal.